You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. The social programming of the subconscious mind, it can rule every aspect of our lives if we let it. If we do not reverse the programming, negative programming, from either experiences we had, like you said, in childhood, or our upbringing, or things that made us feel good that weren't for us or in our best interest to do, become a part of us so deeply to where we have a belief that this is who we are now and this is our makeup, and that we can't change for some reason. It becomes really difficult for people to kind of break that programming, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to break programming the older you get. You ever seen a stubborn old person that just won't change?
Yes.
That's the reason why. And one of the things that I used to explain to people how that works is Jean Piaget's stages of cognitive development. So he basically acknowledges the childhood period from 0 to 7, where that's your dominant programming and you're taking that in from your family, your community, whatever you're exposed to. And then he expounds on that and he explains that from 7 to 14, you're then actively trying to resolve whatever programming that you picked up from 0 to 7, and you're trying to determine whether that works for you or not, whether you get a reward, whether it keeps you safe, whether you feel accepted, whether you feel joy, all those different things. And so from 14 to 21, when your body is going through that huge change, you are pretty much in a phase where you have decided what kind of person you're going to be. And, you know, teenagers are really stubborn, so they're not aware of any dominant programming that is potentially negative from 14 to 21. And so that's why I think the conditioning that we have in society, this is my personal concept about this through observation, is that no matter where you are in the world, there's this idea that your 20s is all about poisoning yourself and partying and doing all these different things because it'll be okay later on, and you're supposed to have fun. And in reality, all of the things that are fun are really bad for us. Right? It's all disguised under the bracket of, which I should say, it's being held up by the bracket of fun and funny, and it's going to be really cool. And that becomes problematic because then we don't see the residual programming that we really need to get rid of, that's keeping us from having the money, the relationships, and all the other things that we want, the good health, etc. And anybody that has kids or that are teenagers, they know you can't talk to a teenager. Even if you remember your teenage days, there's probably points in time where people try to talk to you and you're like, you're wrong about everything. So you're not really in a good state. And by the time you get to 35, then you are a complex set of hardwired programs that are very tough to break. And so that's kind of the way that it goes. But then we have all the other factors that pretty much go into this complex soup of self-sabotage, really. And television is one of the main ones. The internet is another one of the main ones. Anything to do with screens is a direct bypass.
Yeah, I was about to say, after our traumatic childhood experiences with family members and friends growing up, then the programming from television and internet takes over. If that's what we are submerging ourselves in on a daily basis, that's going to be our next level of programming, as long as we are taking that bullshit into our minds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you really think about it, most of us don't have a choice. I guess our generation was probably one of the last generations to be told, go outside. If you're going outside, don't come back inside until it's dark.
Yeah.
And then when you went back inside the house, your parents were like, why are you here? It's still early, right? So we didn't have as much of that programming, but it still affected us. And people don't like to hear this, but I'll explain it as best as I can. The limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, and the prefrontal cortex work together. When you watch TV, it bypasses that. It shuts off the prefrontal cortex within 90 seconds of watching any screen. That becomes direct input into the brain. So if you watch a horror movie, or even if you watch a comedy, you are emotionally identifying with what is on the screen. And it has been said a million times that the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what's reality on a screen and what's imagined. So as long as you feel it, it becomes a part of you, and it will activate at some point. So like I said, when you're under stress, you begin to play out the programming of the subconscious, because it's trying to keep you safe, it's trying to keep you healthy, and it's trying to keep you happy so that you make it to tomorrow. And so people will do things, and they watch Friends, and that was their favorite TV show, and that's the reason why they keep secrets in all their friendships and relationships, and it blows up in their face, right? Yeah. They watch Family Guy, and they think that show is funny, but that's the reason why they're,
I believe Disney cartoons and princesses has totally screwed relationships in general. They totally mindfuck kids from an early age to believe these fairy tale romantic stories where women can just change a man because that's what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to run off into the sunset and all this crazy bullshit. Well, that's the problem with a lot of mentality for the younger folks and people who have grown up with this stuff in general. They have this illusion of the way a relationship is supposed to play out based on Hollywood.
That's absolutely correct. And that does, we could go right down the rabbit hole with that. There's so many different forms of programming. Like, people who watch anime are subjected to other types of programming as well. It's called fantasy lust programming. It's where you live in this make-believe world. And if you notice that the majority of all the animes that have ever been made are all about the destruction of Neo Tokyo, and the characters are extremely muscular. The women have these extremely large tits. Yeah. Everything is an over exaggeration of reality. So that's what fantasy lust programming is all about. And that's when you notice that some people who are really, really deep into anime, I'm not dissing anybody, but I'm just speaking the truth. Their personalities completely change. They're very wimpy. They don't have very much self-confidence. They speak like anime characters. They dress like anime characters because this reality is so difficult for them to get adjusted to. They would much rather live in a fantasy world.
It's even darker for people who get drug into the darkest levels of pornography and those types of debaucherous behaviors too, right?
Yeah, porn in itself, it just destroys the brain. Honestly, it completely screws up your brain's reward center, so you can't actually do anything that isn't watching porn. And it's anything that's on a screen is going to do that. Like, television is literally a biological weapon. That's what it was created for. And it lowers your IQ, it decreases your verbal abilities, it creates antisocial behavior. It's the precursor for a lot of addiction.
You think there's a lot of harm in going to sleep with the television on with some fucked up programming running in the background?
Yeah, absolutely, because your auditory cortex is one of the most sensitive ones. And so it's a large part of how your subconscious is made up. It's reading information from the environment. The subconscious is a scanning device, and it uses your ears. So anything you hear while you're sleeping, you're transitioning into the deepest of brain waves, and it's direct programming.